This panel discussion deals with the Dore bar imports and refining business, sourcing, regulatory issues in sampling and inspection, settlement of payment, policies on refining, differentials as well as area-based incentives. Moderating this discussion, taking it to its just end, would be Mr. Jeffrey Rhodes, the CEO of Z-Gold. Everyone, please put your hands up for the moderator.
I think that this session actually has the longest introduction of any sessions I've been involved in. So, Dore bar imports, refining business, sourcing, regulatory issues, sampling and inspection, settling of payment, policies on refining, and so on and so forth. I think really we need to get that down into some really basics, and that is getting this business in India, the refining sector, Dore, and simplifying it. I think markets can become too complicated. And I think certainly in India, as much as anywhere else, the market is overcomplicated. So let's kind of simplify it. India's obsession with gold goes back thousands of years, I think 5,000 years. And I think that whatever the regulators think or want to do, they're actually never ever going to regulate gold out of the Indian psychology. Since 1998, when gold was effectively deregulated, and gold imports were approved through banks and nominated agencies, and just my own take on that, I think it was the right thing to do. I agree with Amar Singh, who's here. I think using that kind of medium of banks and nominated government agencies was a great idea. Then, I think, to go from full regulation to partial regulation to deregulation would have been wrong. And to be where we are today is okay, but that's the past. I think in the future we need something else. But anyway, during this period, gold flowed into India from 1998 in the form of kilo bars, 10 tola bars and 100-gram bars in ever-growing amounts. To the extent, in 2011, a record import of 1,200 tonnes. I think that's 50% of global production at the time came to India. And that meant, unfortunately, $54 billion left the country in the form of foreign exchange. The total imports of gold between 2005 and 2015 was 10,000 tonnes. I mean, it's staggering to think of that. Now, because physical gold, kilo bars, which are fully bankable around the world, don't form part of the Indian banking pool of liquidity, that meant in total $365 billion over that 10-year period left the country. And it's put it into context, 35% crude oil you need. The gold import bill was 35% of crude oil. It's incredible. So the government really had to do something about it. And so it embarked on a period of re-regulation, if you like, imposing conditions on the markets that were aimed at stopping the imports. 2012, import duty went from 1 to 2%, 2 to 4%, then eventually, August 2013, we're up to 10%. Concessions were allowed for the refining sector, then started to be encouraged, and concessions were allowed for the special economic zones and also for onshore refineries. We had the 80-20 rule that I don't know what you guys think here, was not successful. Anyway, that was cancelled. We removed that in 2014. Then 2015, we really embarked on a new era. 3 gold policies were announced in the Union budget that year: the gold monetisation scheme, the gold sovereign bond, and an official Indian gold coin. But the most important thing was PM Modi announcing Make in India. I think that that's the most significant change that we've seen since the government took office. Things changed. The 2%, 1 or 2% concession went down to 1.25% and 0.5%, and then the 0.5% for onshore refineries has been upped to 2.65%. It bears no relation to a discount. What's the discount here at the moment? 3%? So it hardly makes a difference. So we've got all of these changes. I think the big development, of course, was Dore bars. And we saw Dore bars in 2012 when the concessions were allowed, were around 50 tonnes. And then in last year in 2015, I think it was about 316 tonnes of Dore came into the country. In January, if you had a poll of the audience, a poll of this audience and said, what do you think the imports will be in 2016? I think you would have said 400 to 500 tonnes. We were on target for that. So the amount of gold that's actually come in this year, I think, is around about 80 tonnes. And the expectations now for 2016, looking at around 160 to 200 tonnes. So I think the Modi government, it was great that they encouraged the refining sector and Make in India, and these concessions really have had an impact. But the real ambition of the Modi government is to see this to become an Indian internalised market. So the gold that's consumed comes from India. And although I've had a lot of negativity I've heard over the last 2 days about GMS, actually I think GMS is an amazing initiative. Now with 25,000 tonnes of gold held privately, if you can mobilise just a part of that, you transform this economy, and if you bring that gold that's been turned into kilobars, and if anyone from government's listening, and the kilobars are allowed as a banking asset, so it becomes part of the banking pool of liquidity. I've heard a lot of talk, what are we going to do with this gold? So the banks say, we've got the gold, we've got it on deposit, what are we going to do? Well guys, swap it, allow it to be swapped for money and lend the money. You've got a whole new pool of liquidity. So I think that the GMS is an amazing story. I think what's happened, despite the 10% import duty, the government's going in the right direction. So the idea is gold consumed in India should come from India. What I'd like to get onto, gold mining in India. What does the audience know about gold mining in India? Let's just turn it around. Does anyone have any idea how much gold is mined in India today? A guess from anyone?
1 ton.
1 ton. Not bad. Not bad. I think it's 0 actually. But it was. I mean, at first. I mean, VK, you know, you've seen the presentation. So. But for me, when you look at India and the potential, I was in Lima in May, and it was really a gold mining conference, and I'm talking about India. And I thought, what am I going to talk about in India at a gold mining conference? India has the same geology as Western Australia. Australia produces about 200 tonnes of gold a year. So, given the fact that we share that geology, it is felt that there's a lot of gold under the ground here. And the actual amount of estimated gold resources at the moment is 600 tonnes. We have 110 tonnes of likely gold reserves. Now, given that geology and the focus on Make in India, in February, the Mine Secretary announced the government planned to auction the Kolar mine, and along with 2 others. And I think Vedanta won the first ever auction for a gold mine in India. Now, that is an amazing development. And it's a fact that there is estimated to be 100,000 square kilometres of possible gold. Now, in terms of exploration and production, only 465 square kilometres has so far been granted. So you've got almost that. It's a virgin market. And just think, fast forward, India having a gold mining sector where you're producing maybe 100 tonnes plus of gold a year. Where would that gold be refined? In India, not going outside. So here you have a possible structure. You know, we've been talking about Dore and this and that. The reality is you have a secondary market through GMS that could make India the biggest gold producer in the world. And then apart from that, you could have primary production that actually is in the region of 100 tonnes. You never know. So I think that's what I'd like to throw into the mix of this conference. The only person I've ever heard talk about gold mining in India was actually 2 days ago in Mumbai with Bargaiman, who mentioned gold mining. I've never heard it before. So I think, you know, Bargaiman knows this market. So I think that's seriously important. I think there are issues and so on. Don't need to go into that. But what I'd like to do now is start the discussion. You've heard too much from me already, I'm afraid. And bring up Mr. Luis Cabello, who is the Trade Commissioner or Consul General from the Peruvian Embassy here. His job is to promote trade between India and Peru. Let me hand over to you, Luis.
Good afternoon. My name is Luis Cabello. Papers say that I'm the Commercial Consul of Peru in India, but also your friend. This is such my country, such is my Peru. As you may have said, I have to promote relations with my country. And I'm sure you know what Peru is. Peru is not only Machu Picchu, even though it has been adjudged as one of the 30 most emblematic and recognizable sites in the world, and just like your Taj Mahal, it is one of the new 7 wonders of the modern world. Because of the fusion of our cultures that exists in my country, our food is very special. Peruvian, we are proud of our food. We are an extraordinary country when speaking of gastronomy and in the culinary world. Peru has been distinguished as the world's best culinary destination in the last 5 years in the World Travel Awards. As you may know, Peru is located in South America, in the western coast of South America, bordering with the Pacific Ocean, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, and Colombia. Our main language is Spanish. We have a population of 31 million people, and we are 10.5 hours behind India time. The coast, the jungle, and the highlands are our 3 main regions. Following more than a decade of record high growth, Peru's economy has remained strong and resilient, despite global uncertainty, and this is thanks to our strong fundamentals and supportive trade and policy management. We have a leading position compared with GDPs of some Latin American countries. Inflation is under control, with the lowest rates in the region. Peru offers you a friendly investment environment, a solid, stable, and transparent legal framework based on a national treatment. Our government seeks to attract foreign and domestic investment, taking the necessary step for a consistent investment policy which eliminates all obstacles. Peru is now considered to have one of the most open investment regions in the world. Also, we offer an extended market, taking into consideration the multiple FTAs signed with our partners. Peru is definitely an ancient mining country. The mining sector is and will always be very important to our national economy. Peru is the world's 3rd largest producer of copper after Chile and China, and holds the 3rd largest copper reserves. We are the 3rd largest producer of silver in the world after Mexico and China. Our country also has significant reserve of coal, lead, zinc, molybdenum, among other minerals. Mineral exports account almost 60% of Peru's total shipments abroad. Given its strong mining potential, Peru has been attracting the world's major mining companies to expand activities in my country. Virtually all of the world's multinational mining companies operate in Peru. As far as gold is concerned, Peru is the world's sixth largest producer after China, Australia, the US, Russia, and South Africa, with an important reserve. Our main customers are Switzerland, Canada, US, India, and the United Kingdom. Our gold export to India shows the importance of Peru as a supplier of this mineral. Before 2012, gold from Peru was not directly imported to India. Last year, we have shipped more than 355 million US dollars. In addition, our exports of gold to India during the first half of this year reached 180 million, which is more than the double of the same period during 2015. Taking into consideration that India is the first gold consumer worldwide, now you know why I'm here, to increase the trade relation between Peruvian and Indian companies. The main duty of the Trade Office of Peru in India is to facilitate your business, especially providing information of relevant and responsible Peruvian companies. I mean responsible sourcing. Several visits from different Indian companies shows the great interest in Peruvian gold from India. So, after this, visit Peru and do business with my country. Thank you so much.
How many of you guys realize the size of the business between Peru and India? I'm in the industry and I didn't have a clue. So, and Luis, when did you take over your role at the embassy? 2012? When did 2012? 2014. So since 2014, we've seen pretty much the scale of gold trade between Peru and India almost grow almost 100%. Fantastic. So, great. Give them a round of applause. I think this highlights the importance of India in the global international precious metals market. That we've got China, and everyone talks about China. But really, India, for me, is the most interesting and the most dynamic market. So now I'd like to ask Anil Kansara from Gujarat Gold Centre, just to, everyone knows you, I'm sure, but just introduce yourself and make your opening remarks.
I'm Anil Kansara from Gujarat Gold Centre. We are a pioneer refiner in India when the Gold Control Act was lifted. In 2000, when India government introduced the hallmarking of jewellery on voluntary basis, we started operating two hallmarking centers also. Basically, we have been already involved in refining activities. I think probably we are the second generation. We have a third generation also coming. Since 1958, we have been operating refinery in India. 1962, there was a Gold Control Act. Of course, we stopped there. 1968, where one of the 25 refineries in India were licensed to produce gold. Again, after a year, the operations were stopped. In 1991, again, after the repealment of Gold Control Act, we started our activities again. So almost about 23 years of operating refineries now. But we feel we are in the same way what we started earlier. Because of the frequent changes of government policies, I think probably the SMEs refineries are facing difficulties for survival. Domestic recycling market also is disturbed time and again because of latest because of excise duty. A lot of trade right from the mining to the end consumer is not available, and that's the main where the refineries want to operate actually according to responsible gold guidelines. We are unable to do so. There are various reasons. So I would like actually to all the value chain participants in the country to probably come to a conclusion after all these meetings and everything We had a meeting yesterday also, we are talking about responsible gold. Start from the end consumer who buys the jewelry. Rather than having so many restrictions, paperwork and everything, why not everybody, all participants become a part of that activity, so that any document coming from that segment should be accepted in the next segment. And government intervention should not be so much that the business become sort of, it's a free market, let restrictions go, people be allowed to import scrap, allowed to import Dore, whichever form. Ultimately, the refinery should get that, food actually to run a refinery. The jewelers will get refined good quality gold to them. And the miners will have a lot of opportunity to bring gold to the country. So as we know, we are one of the highest consumers in the world. So that's, I think, probably my view of refinery activities of probably gold entire industry participants.
Sakila, I'm actually going to switch because I can't leave ladies until last. So Sakila, can I call you Shakira? Just looks like Shakira. Just tell us about yourself and really what Simone wants.
Well, I work for the LBMA. I suspect the LBMA doesn't need an introduction, but I may do. I'm the lawyer at the LBMA, and since joining 2 years ago, I've been working quite heavily on the responsible gold guidance. And actually, it's actually a good platform to sit here and actually share a success story. I think what we've heard in sort of a few panels before this is some of the challenges that face the Indian market, some of the challenges that face the gold market. But let me start with the success story and then move on to the challenges. The success story is we actually have an infrastructure in place to actually address the challenges under responsible sourcing. And that's called the Responsible Gold Guidance, which the LBMA implemented in 2012. And the success story is that all the LBMA accredited good delivery list refiners have actually passed, for the last few years now, the independent third-party audit, which confirms that they all have sort of an infrastructure in place that addresses due diligence, KYC, the systems and controls that the refiners must have to actually know who they're dealing with. It's been fantastic news, but it hasn't been easy. It wasn't a simple case that we implemented a policy and then suddenly all the refiners globally were able to pass with flying colours. We worked with them, we addressed the issues, we educated them, there was training, we worked with auditors, we had to make sure that the auditors understood the issues. It took a few years, but in 2016 we've had a tremendous amount of success. However, we're not complacent. The success hasn't stopped there. And one of the reasons why I'm in India is to actually raise more awareness about what is it that the Indian market can do to also get involved. Responsible gold is a global issue. It's not just an issue for Europe, it's not an issue for the US. The US many years ago introduced Dore, and they actually named a number of African countries as being high risk. Now there's pros and cons to that approach. Some people thought, excellent, we know the high risk countries, let's just not deal with them. It reduces the risk. Other people criticize that, and my personal view is that I actually don't think you should name on a legislative basis a list of countries that are deemed to be high risk. And the criticism with that is that you actually stop foreign dealings because people are afraid of what it means to deal with these high-risk jurisdictions. The message that we've been delivering from the LBMA is identify the risks, come up with your own risk analysis, categorize them into high, medium and low risk, and then put the right systems and controls in place in terms of what it is that you should be doing in understanding who you're dealing with, the level of interaction you should be having, visiting these customers, the mine sites, and actually coming up with your own infrastructure, which also can be audited internally by your internal auditors. But where you are looking at international trade, actually being open to independent third-party audits. And again, being in India, a lot of refiners have approached the LBMA team and want to understand what it takes to become accredited. My view is there's a slightly easier approach. There's the standards, the quality of the gold bars, the quality of the individual organizations, do they have the right tonnage, do they have the right net worth? But then there's the more challenging part, and that's your actual governance. What is it that you're doing to address these risks in terms of understanding and knowing who it is that you're dealing with? I had meetings with the RBI on this only 2 days ago, and again, it was an interesting discussion. They want to understand what their success stories are, how we implemented it, what is it that we've done in the last few years, and share some of the lessons that we've actually learned. Again, it's not just a London-centric standard, it's a global standard. And I would encourage you to come and speak to us more and actually consult with us in terms of what it is that you think needs to be done to meet compliance with the responsible gold guidance.
In the old days, when you wanted to do business with someone, you went to credit committee, and now you go to credit and risk committee, and you looked at credit, you looked at the transaction, you looked at really the customer. You never looked at supply chain. And actually, supply chain for me is at the top in terms of risk for a company rather than an afterthought. So, and I think LBMA have done a great job in developing that, and I think using them as the global benchmark is a fantastic one. Very fortunate. We've already heard from one part of the world that supplies $353 million worth of gold in 2015 to India. Now we're going to turn to Ghana. So Mr. Kwame Ope, I think you're almost a celebrity on not just the panel here, because lots of talk about Ghana and India and so on. But you actually represent on the ground experience and knowledge. So why don't you just introduce yourself and make your own introductory remarks?
Thank you, sir. I represent my company, Italtech Ghana Limited, one of the large gold exporting, licensed gold exporting companies, and a member of the Ghana Association of Licensed Exporters. It is important to note that information about Ghana in the industry is rather in the negative. That is because there is a misconception. People do not really know how the industry in Ghana functions. If anybody came to Ghana to buy gold from any of the licensed members, we follow a very strict regulation. The OECD due diligence requirement is quite a strict standard module which involves, sourcing. And it goes way down on the value chain, knowing who you're buying the gold from, the sources where the gold is coming from, environmental standards, and child labor abuses and everything. So the OECD is quite a strict regulatory framework. And the Association of Licensed Gold Exporters, adopt to those standards. And it's interesting to note that a lot of people don't know that sourcing gold from Ghana requires quite, this strict mechanism. But as any liberalized economy, Ghana is overly liberalized, and anybody can come in, go and try to buy gold. Yesterday, I think I heard from one of the participants, I think Mr. Fariga, make an exceptional case about Ghana. It's unfortunate. It's because of the over-liberalized nature of the economy. He's able to come into Ghana. He's one of the largest exporters of gold from Ghana from the years 2012 to 2015. He was able to get into the market and buy gold directly, maybe sometimes from unregulated sources. And that is why he was able to make such a comment. But if he really bought gold from licensed gold exporters, he would know that the requirements that come with it is quite regulatory. I mean, in Ghana we have three main segments of gold mines. We have the large-scale mine, which is the Anglo Gold, Ashanti, the Newmont, and normally the country statistics gears towards those large-scale mines because the government has a 10% automatic stake in those mines. But there's quite also a powerful force, which is the small-scale sector. And these regulated mines allotted, anything between 25 acres and above. And the Minerals Commission of Ghana, which is the regulatory body of gold mining, makes sure that these companies that have licenses to mine, mine under acceptable conditions. They make snap checks to the mines. You have to make a monthly returns to the Minerals Commission. If there's any problem with environmental standards, your license will be revoked. So it's not easy. It's just like India. They have quite a very strict regulatory framework. But because, once again, I said the nature of the business environment in Ghana, which is very liberal, we have also, Ghana has been mining gold for over 400 years. And there is also pockets of loosely knit artisanal miners. They are not regulated because they mine in the villages. They have no license. They don't have any requirements. So if you came to Ghana and you find your way to go in the village and engage with an artisanal miner, you would have problems. You may be able to buy gold from an artisanal miner, but you have no regulatory requirements. Your problem will be how do you export that gold? Because in Ghana, we follow very strict export requirements. The customs make sure that the company that sold the gold gives you a copy of their mining license. You have the environmental license attached to it. You have the district assembly license where the gold was mined. These are all traceability issues by the OECD standards, which we already have put in place a couple of years back. And so we want to bring the news to India to understand that the gold that comes from Ghana, from the Licensed Association of Exporters, is quite regulatory. One of the requirements from the central bank, the Bank of Ghana, I've seen on the script, the settlement of payment. In Ghana, the Bank of Ghana is very, very, very strict on that. Because if gold is sold outside, the money is required to come back to the economy. Because the gold is the produce of the country. A lot of people have difficulties with Ghana because of those requirements. So you can't single out the country and say, Ghana is an exceptional case, but Peru is not. We have very strict requirements in the country. And if you have to deal with any company in Ghana, you might look at the association of, a member of the Association of Licensed Gold Exporters. Then you would know that wherever you are buying your gold, it is proven, it is clear, and it follows the traceability.
After our meeting, I had a chat with my colleague, and I was very impressed with both you, your company, and your approach. And if you like, I was in Ghana last year there was a gold conference last August, this time last year. And I came away and I was really not so comfortable. But after meeting you and hearing you now, I think my level of comfort is up there rather than down there. So thank you. So last but not least, Mr. James Jones. I think everyone in here knows you, certainly from the Indian community, but why don't you just tell us about yourself briefly and your opening remarks.
I'm James Jones from Chamanur Gold Refinery, based in the southern part of India, Cochin. And we are operational for the past 2 decades. I would like to go a little detail into the feedstock for the refineries. Even though there are 35 refineries in the country, majority of the gold refineries are set up recently, mostly catering to the feedstock of Dore. But there are quite a few refineries, like 4 or 5 refineries, who are doing scrap gold refining from the secondary market as well. Even though the quantities are not very substantial, then there is business all around the year. That's one attraction. And of course, Dore we have problems of wholesale, we have problems of pricing, because of the present discount going on in the market, we are finding it difficult. But we do have new avenues, like the GMS has opened up a new avenue for the gold refineries in the country. And various associations like the Bullion Federation of India, they are all working with the government and the commodity exchanges, MCX, to have Indian good delivery, physical delivery malls in future. So maybe in another 2-3 months time, we are working on the parameters. Once that is in place, we will take it with the regulatory authorities. Hopefully in another 2-3 months time, we will have physical spot market delivery malls from at least 5 or 6 good refineries which are at par with international refineries in terms of quality. That will definitely open up a new segment of bullion trading and opportunity for them.
We've actually just had, I've got a list of questions here that we've all been through, we've discussed. It's not quite rehearsed, but we have a kind of common theme. However, we've just had 2 questions come through in Kwame. Straight to you, straight to the point. The first question is PMMC a government body? Does all Dore exports allowed only through are Dore exports allowed only through PMMC? So they're the first 2 questions. I think the audience clearly are eager to hear what you have to say.
Well, the PMMC is a government body, but it's a licensed marketing company. It's not a regulatory body. It's a licensed marketing company. You know, gold used to be the preserve of the country. And in the 80s, I think specifically around 1982, when the country started its economic recovery program, it approached the World Bank, for money. And one of the conditions imposed by the World Bank is to deregulate gold sector. And so the PMMC became the first marketing company for Ghana. But quite recently we have almost 19 licensed exporting companies. I think what goes on in the PMMC is they try to be overly political, and they try to let people think that they are the only licensed exporters of gold. That is not the case. It's not true.
So today you don't need a kind of PMMC stamp.
You do not. That's the misconception. A lot of people come to Ghana and the belief is, I have a PMMC license. But a PMMC license is just an agency license that is given to you. I can give anybody an agency license. It requires me giving you a contract and a license. You buy gold and sell to me. I am the final exporter. Anybody with a PMMC license, it's not a license, it's an agency certificate that allows you to buy gold and sell through the PMMC. You understand? The PMMC is a marketing company, so it is not a regulatory body.
I think that was almost easy. Now more difficult. I am going to ask you, I thought about, maybe I won't ask you about it. What is the quantity of gold coming from Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso and being exported from Ghana? Does it happen? If so, what is the scope?
Well, it does happen. It's made. It does happen. But I think it's very negligible. Ghana is well noted for gold mines. I mean, the name of the country from the 18th century, by courtesy of the British, you know as the Gold Coast. So Ghana has been synonymous with gold for a very long time. Quite recently, because the gold is a vein that travels, the gold belt, we've realized that Ivory Coast and Burkina, just about 2 decades or so, have started also mining gold. And because Ghana has a very liberal economy, I think that some of those gold find their way into our market. You cannot say no. But then most of the gold that is exported from Ghana comes from recognized Ghanaian mines. It would be very difficult to quantify the volume of gold that comes from the Ivory Coast or Burkina Faso.
Less than 10%?
Well, nobody can really say that. Plus or minus, I cannot say that.
Okay, I won't push you on it. I'm not going to follow this exactly, I'd like to talk about silver, Luis. So, the fact is that in 2015, India imported 8,000 tons of bullion bars in various places. 8,000 tons. Total silver production annually is in the region of 30,000 tons. So we're talking almost a third of silver production comes into India as bullion bars. Now, I saw from your slide, obviously I know that Peru is the third largest producer of silver in the world. And I don't know the answer to this. Does any silver come from Peru directly to India in the form of Dore?
Yes, for sure, but not in the same way that the gold is coming here to India. As you may understand, we have to choose some particular products for this particular market, and believe me, gold comes first. Now, for the years to come, believe me, silver will come more easily than gold from Peru to India.
Yeah, I would have thought so, because if you just look at geography, just put it on a boat and sail it around, what you're here in, how long? 20 days? Maybe 30 days? From Lima or Peru to India?
By shipping or 45 days?
How much?
By boat,
Yeah.
by vessel, 45 days.
45 days?
It's a
These
transit.
are faster boats.
Yeah.
But do you see that as a potential growth industry between, I mean, your job is to promote trade between two countries.
The idea is
Do you
to
see that as an important development?
is to facilitate the relation between Peruvian companies and Indian companies. Believe me, years back, we never received people in the embassy, especially in the office. I arrived here in March 2014, and just a couple of Indian business people went to my office. After a couple of seminars, being here and there, we started showing to India that Peru is one of the best producers of gold in the world. And after that started growing. And now you see what we are doing here in India. And the numbers are going better and better every month.
So guys, the refiners on the panel, could you handle silver imports? I mean, I know your feedstock traditionally before the last few years with gold Dore was recycling old scrap jewelry and so on. But could you handle, both of you, could you handle, and would you welcome the evolution of a silver refining industry?
Silver refining industry exists in India since many years. We have been, in fact, apart from gold, our first refining activities is what we are doing, refining of silver since
Really?
50 years. We have been producing 999 silver. We were one of the refineries approved by Reserve Bank of India for its marks on silver. Reserve Bank of India through Mint used to monitor refineries in India. We were licensed by Reserve Bank of India to put a mark on our silver which was accepted to our country as good delivery silver. It is still there. Only thing we request, I think probably over a period of time, RBI stopped actually intervening through Mint because the India government Mint said they do not have manpower to monitor the refining industry in India. So it's slowly diluted. So many refineries, I think probably like gold, the tons of silver is getting refined in street corner refineries we call it. Every probably more than some 2,000, 3,000 silver refineries operating in India, producing 97-98%. Ultimately, everything gets converted into 50% purity of silver jewelry. That an average national standard of jewelry in India is 65. So whether the silver is 99% or 999 or it is 98 does not matter.
You know, I've been coming to India for a zillion years, and you learn something every time. You really are sort of learning about silver. James, would you like to comment?
I would like to add a point. Like in gold, we have the hallmarking, where 916 is practically adopted all over the country, maybe 75% of the jewelry sold in the country. Whereas there is no such quality control for silver jewelry. Like Mr. Anil said, the purity where it is supposed to be 92.5 sterling silver, what is sold as silver is hardly 40 to 50% purity silver jewelry. So, majority of the silver refining, secondary refining happening in the country is done by the unorganized sector. And I don't think the big organized refineries are doing anything from the secondary market. But we are importing for primary refining, we are importing silver Dore. But unfortunately, as per the government rules, anything that contains more than 5% gold is categorized as gold Dore. So I don't think we are having independent figures on silver Dore imports. Even though a lot of silver Dore is coming into the country for majority of the refineries.
You know, you make such a good point there. And I think my general observation about India and rules and regulations, and we talked about rules about gold Dore. Now that is very difficult to say that you can't have more than 5% gold in silver Dore is almost, it's not ridiculous, but it's very, very difficult. So I think in general, the rules and regulations that you refer to this, rules and regulations with respect to the import of Dore, of raw material, not finished products, raw material, is too complicated. It's far too complicated. And it should be, if you're importing raw material and you're turning it into jewellery or even fabricated bars, you're adding value, there should be no restrictions on that. There should be no import duty on that. It should be that part of Made in India. Really, what would either of you like to comment on that statement?
2012, when government actually introduced, allowed refineries to import Dore, we had been talking through association to the government since about 2006 we started that exercise that please allow Indian refineries to import raw material. 2006 government said yes, we'll allow refineries to import gold, scrap for the export purpose. That's so somewhere in 2010 the government brought out a notification that you can import gold concentrate, not Dore. And nobody was aware that time that Dore is something different than, there was no, what is Dore basically, you understand, unrefined gold, that was the only definition of it. At 2010 they said gold concentrate can be allowed. I said how that gold concentrate will be evaluated at the custom point of view. The duty was only 2% that time. It's very attractive proposition. We tried to actually talk to the custom department, will import gold concentrate, will you pass to the, and said there is no possibility of verifying whether the concentrate at the entire lot will have the same quality. So it was not permitted. We went back to the government, the world over there is no concentrate being refined, it's only Dore being refined. Government made a law, okay, Dore can be allowed, but it should be less than 80% pure. I said we try to actually contact some foreign supplier. We want Dore, it should be less than 80% gold. And they said, how in the world, if you go with a lamp also across the world, how do you get gold Dore which is less than 80%? The gold concentrate basically produced in the mining company is about 90% pure. So I went back to the government again. Okay, they said we make it 95%. So that jewelry out, pure gold does not come in form of gold. Even then also the 2% duty initially from Dore, just within 2 years it went up to about today is about 8.35% duty. So many changes happened by the time we actually negotiated with the mining company or go somewhere and try to negotiate them to import Dore. We are facing all these issues at the local level. At the same time with the mining company, when we go to those countries, it's a packing list, the size of Dore. I remember the first Dore, I had to in fact break my head with a supplier in the Ghana company. This is what came to us. This we have pattern. We have never done it so many years. We have been exporting Dore to Dubai, to many other countries. What is asking such type of?
Thank you. Look, I just was given a sign here, 5 minutes left.
But these are
Get that, guys. We were 10 minutes late starting because of technology. And I've got all the guys here. You just have to wait for your food, I'm afraid. I'd like to really Sakila to bring you into something that is fairly contentious. Well, I thought it would be contentious. It appears not to be. So, India, and I would support this statement, has not really paid attention to responsible sourcing. Not really. Should it be made compulsory in terms of law that all suppliers of gold into India, whether it's Dore or concentrates or scrap, should it be mandatory?
That is quite a contentious question there. I guess I can only really speak from a benchmarking perspective. The LBMA makes it mandatory on its good delivery list refiners. But on a legislative basis, Europe is making it, it hasn't been finalised yet, but the European Union is making it mandatory for anybody importing into Europe to do an independent third-party audit, basically looking to implement the OECD due diligence guidance. America, we already know what's been happening through Dodd-Frank. So there is precedent there where it is becoming mandatory. Personally, do I think that's a good idea? Why not? Because at least it provides for consistency. If we're all working off the same standard, which is the OECD due diligence guidance, it shouldn't be a challenge at that point. We've been lobbying quite proactively with the European Commission to make sure that that's the standard that their own regulation is going to be based on. So as for India, why not look at the OECD due diligence guidance? If you look at China, their Chamber of Commerce has been working quite sort of intensely on a similar guidance whereby they're looking to implement the OECD due diligence guidance. I don't know if it's mandatory at this point because they're still going through the draft and finalisation. The LBMA has been involved in providing views and it's gone through a consultation process. And whether it ends up being mandatory on their members, I don't know the answer. But as I said, we make it mandatory. The European Union is going to make it mandatory. America, we already know what's going on. So I'll be moving towards a situation where globally this is going to be something that we all end up having to do. Probably is what I would think. So before it's thrown on us and imposed on us, let's get ahead of it and actually start doing this on a voluntary basis if it hasn't been made mandatory yet.
Thank you. Good point. I mean, make it voluntary, and if you're doing it anyway, if it becomes mandatory, it's fine. Now, it's a yes/no, I would say.
I would support a mandatory on that.
You would support mandatory?
I would support.
You're a yes. Mandatory or not mandatory?
Mandatory with a definitely long time frame. Not,
So is it yes or no?
yes.
And you? And Louis, from a government perspective. So here you have 5 distinguished panel members who clearly, if you say mandatory, you believe that having a responsible supply chain policy as a supplier of any form of gold, it is the right thing to do. Correct? I think, in terms of takeaway from this particular conference, we've heard it on other panel discussions that this focus on responsible sourcing is absolutely crucial. We don't have any more questions from the audience. And I was asked to talk about GST, but I think GST in all of the sessions has been like talked to death. But one thing I would like to talk about very briefly, my view about GST, which is in other words value-added tax, it means value-added. Okay, so you don't tax the underlying raw material, you tax the value-add. So would you agree that whatever GST rate comes, it should, in terms of gold and silver, it should only be applied to the value-added part of the product? Anil?
I think that right concept would be GST is introduced with the entire chain of right from raw material to the end use. There's a value added at every stage, and I think GST basically is designed to have GST applied only on value add. What is happening right now that because of different tax structures and various type of things, it basically keeps that thing which would have been normally taxed at about 10-12%, ultimately a customer pays about 30% of that. Instead of that, only value addition and no entity tax. That would be the best possibility. You bring anything inside the country, there should not be any heavy tax on that, and whichever that value chain it passes through, whatever value is being added, that should be taxed at a reasonable rate. That's the best way I think probably an industry can, everybody will be happy in that process.
Absolutely. So each of the five, I'm going to close the session now because we do have to go and have some lunch, and I'm just going to make a kind of final comment and see what you guys think. So it seems to me that India, or the government of India, is living in the past. And by that I mean, independence from the UK was 15th August 1947. And then the rupee, I think almost sterling was the currency, rupee was introduced. And as we were talking about before, there was a fear that given the love of gold in India, that everyone would cash in their rupees and buy gold and cause a run on the banks. So 1962, I'm sure most of you know, but 1962, gold imports were banned, correct? 1968, the ownership of gold in India, the world's biggest off-take market, was banned. And you couldn't own gold. And so the entire industry went underground. Then the repeal of the Gold Act, I think 1991, then you could own gold again, and then 1997 you could import.
I'll tell you a funny situation. 1968, when the refineries, few refineries were allowed to operate, we had it was done actually at the refinery that we have excise inspector and excise, two officers from the excise will sit in the refinery. Anybody bringing primary gold was not permitted to be brought. You can bring only jewelry. Anything which is solid used to be seized by the excise department. At 10 o'clock they will come to the refinery, they will open the safe which was normally locked on the previous day. Anything which comes to the refinery has to pass through the excise inspection. We do processing, and then whatever is left over for the next set process, once again we put it in the safe. The customer will put a seal on that, and the next set is open. That is how it was operated in 1968 for 1 year, and there was hardly, the people were scared actually. Basically any gold which is solid like that, was solid gold, separate, it was considered as a primary gold. But it gave a way that any gold being imported or primary gold was converted into a shape of jewelry and brought to the refinery. So, I don't know, refineries are running in a very funny situation for a refinery to operate in India. Very difficult.
Look, then we go forward to 1997. But by the way, 1960, I know this. You know how much gold was imported into India from Dubai in 1968? 800 tons. 800 tons in 1968. Absolutely mind-boggling. But then fast forward, and so now we are in a new world of deregulated markets with the agencies and so on, and the banks. And then 2012 we start to get regulation coming back in. A message I'd like to give to the government, to RBI, is that India has grown up. It's a modern country, it's a modern economy. And it's the fastest growing economy in the world. It's the #1 pick for investors investing their money from around the world is into India. And it's time to accept that you are in the Premier League. You're not in the Championship anymore, you're in the Premier League. I would get rid of all these rules and regulations with respect to gold and silver. I wouldn't have it. I just sort of go into the big wide world and compete. Allow banks to be bullion banks here. Allow banks to lend, borrow, sell, buy, do derivatives. Allow banks to be bullion banks. I would allow the jewelry industry to source their gold from wherever and let the market set the levels. I tell you, very importantly, it doesn't make sense for an Indian gold refinery to not be able to export its kilobars. I don't understand that, because I understand the other way. imports of kilobars, dollars going out. But kilobars going out, dollars coming in, I would have thought that's something that really is something that we should ask the authorities to look at this, deregulate this market. And I tell you, India won't be importing thousands of 1,000 tons of gold. It will be exporting 1,000 tons of gold on top of the 1,000 tons of consumption. This will be a 2,000 ton market. If we just deregulate, let the market set its own levels. And so, from this panel discussion, what's your view? I mean, I know you're looking from LBMA perspective, you're looking from a regulatory perspective. Do you feel India would benefit from deregulation?
I think deregulation, it's a pretty broad area. So what are we deregulating here? What are we regulating? So as far as I'm concerned, and the focus for me is responsible sourcing. I think that would benefit, but deregulation covers so much, so I think it needs to be a bit more specific.
I'm really talking about the import-export controls. I think not deregulation in terms of lack of responsible gold. Really, there's so much paperwork around. I mean, for example, you can't import scrap. You can't import secondary bars in. You can import it, but you can't get the benefit. So my view is that get rid of all of that. Have the controls in terms of regulatory control, but let the market look after itself. So, and from your perspective, would it make a benefit for your country, Ghana, and your company, if in fact it was much easier to export your gold to India?
Definitely yes. Definitely yes.
James?
One fortunate thing is that the government has recognized the jewelry industry as one of the 25 industries in the Make in India campaign. The entire supply chain, right from the refinery to the jewelry industry. But the present government treats jewelry as a luxury item and not as a poor man's investment option. So naturally the government is very reluctant to relax on the duty side. That's one area that we are working on, hopefully.
And here.
Mr. James said yes, I do agree to that.
Okay. And Luis, do you want to add your views on that?
As you said, I can't mention a comment regarding India because of my position, but I want to share something with you. Years back, I'm talking about 25 years back, only talking about duty customs tariff. The average in Peru was 66%. Now we have 1.3% if you want to do imports. And as you said, a lot of regulations, a lot of crazy rules, whatever. But my government decided to change that and to facilitate people business. Now, after that, Peru is one of the best economies in Latin America. I'm so proud of that, and I want to share that with you. That's what I have to say.
That's fantastic. I think that's a great way to end this session. So, a big round of applause for really fantastic panel. It's the most international panel of the whole conference, and I think it was great. Thank you for being so good to me. And sorry about the technology at the start. I think we ended up, it was successful. Thank you.
With a memento for Mr. Luis Miguel Cabello, a memento for Mr. Anil Kansara, a memento for Mr. Kwame Ofei, Mr. James Jones, and of course the lovely Ms. Shakila Mirza. I would like to invite Mr. Rajesh Parekh to present a memento to Mr. Jeffrey Rhodes.